A cook treated a beggar like family. That is the whole beginning of this story. Not a rich woman, not someone with extra to give. A young woman who was building her own dream from scratch, who was counting every naira at the end of every day, who was trying to make her food stall work while the world around her moved on without noticing her. And she still fed him, every single day, without asking why he was on the street, without asking for anything back. Just food, a warm place to sit, and the kind of company that makes a person feel like they are not invisible. He came every day for a long time, and then one day he stopped coming. Years passed. She missed him more than she expected to miss someone she never fully knew. She went on building, she grew her stall into a small shop, she kept cooking, she kept dreaming of something bigger. And then one quiet afternoon, while the rain was falling softly, a black car parked in front of her shop. And out of that car stepped the same man. But he was not the same. Now here is what you do not know yet. You do not know who he really is. You do not know what happened to him between the stall and the black car. You do not know what he built, what he lost, what he destroyed, what he rebuilt with his own hands after losing everything twice. You do not know the story of his parents, which is one of the most painful parts of this whole thing. And you do not know what he asked her, what she said back, and what promise she made him keep before she said yes. All of that is coming. And every single part of it is worth waiting for. This story has everything: a childhood that will break you, a love that starts with a plate of food, a business built and lost and rebuilt from scratch, a secret kept for years, and a moment in a mansion where a woman sits and hears the full truth for the first time. Stay with me, do not go anywhere. If you are watching Folktales Vision for the first time, welcome. We tell the stories that stay with you. Like this video right now if the title alone already said something to you. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss what we put out. And comment below, have you ever been kind to someone without knowing who they really were? Tell us your story. We read every single one. Now let us start from the very beginning. Her name was Amara Osei. She was born in 1995 in a small farming village in the eastern region of Ghana, about 3 hours from Accra by road. The village was the kind of place that does not appear on any major map, but that the people who grow up there carry inside them for the rest of their lives. Red soil, thick green vegetation, the sound of rain on zinc roofs, the smell of wood smoke in the early morning when the women started the fires for cooking. Her parents, Joseph and Beatrice Osei, were farmers. They grew cassava, yam and plantain on a small plot of land that had belonged to Joseph's father before him. They also kept a small number of chickens and sold eggs at the weekly village market. It was a modest, honest life. They were not wealthy by any measure, but they were not broken either. They were the kind of people whose wealth was in what they built with their hands every day rather than in what they accumulated. Joseph was a quiet man who spoke little and worked constantly. He was up before the sun every morning and in the field long before his children woke. He believed in work the way some people believe in religion, completely, without needing to explain it to anyone. He taught his children by example rather than by speech. When Amara was 6 years old and asked him why he worked so hard, he looked at her for a moment and said only, "Because the ground does not give you what you do not put in." Then he went back to what he was doing. She thought about that sentence for years. Beatrice was the opposite of quiet. She was the one who filled the house with sound, cooking, singing, arguing gently with the neighbors, telling stories to the children in the evenings after the day was done. She was also the one who cooked. And this was the thing that shaped Amara more than anything else in her early years. Beatrice cooked the way some people are born to do something, not just for sustenance, for meaning. Every meal was deliberate, every spice was chosen. Every pot was watched with the attention of someone for whom cooking was a form of communication, a way of saying to the people at the table, "I see you, I care about you. Here is the proof." Amara grew up watching her mother cook. She did not just watch, she absorbed. From the age of 7, she was standing beside her mother at the fire, learning which leaves added bitterness and which added depth, learning the difference between a slow boil and a fast one, learning how to taste and adjust and taste again. By the age of 10, she could prepare 5 different dishes entirely on her own. By 12, her mother trusted her to cook the family's Sunday meal without supervision. The neighbors noticed. When there was a funeral or a naming ceremony or any village gathering that required food, people asked for Beatrice's help, and Beatrice always brought Amara. "This girl cooks like a woman twice her age," one of the village elders said at a gathering when Amara was 13. Beatrice smiled with the particular pride of a mother who knew this already. Amara did not think of herself as special. She thought of cooking as work, the same way she thought of the farm as work, necessary, real, something you did with full attention or not at all. What made her different was not just the skill. It was what she thought about while she was cooking. She thought about scale. Not in a complex business sense, she was 13 years old and had no business vocabulary. But in a simple, direct way. When she cooked for 20 people at a village gathering and watched them eat and saw their faces change with the food, she thought, what if this was for 200 people? What if there was a place where people came specifically for this food? What if the thing I know how to do could be made into something that lasted beyond each occasion? These were not formed plans, they were seeds. The same way the seeds her father put in the ground in the rainy season were not yet food, but they were going to be. Secondary school required Amara to travel to the nearest town, about 40 minutes from the village by shared trotro. She stayed during the week with a distant aunt and came home on weekends. This was the first time she had been away from her parents for extended periods, and it showed her two things simultaneously. First, she missed the kitchen the way you miss a language you grew up speaking. Second, the world outside the village was much larger than she had understood from inside it. The town had restaurants, not many and not impressive ones, but they existed and people paid money to eat in them. This was a revelation to Amara in a way that it would not have been to a child who grew up in a town. In the village, you cooked at home or you cooked for community gatherings. The idea that cooking could be a daily commercial transaction, that someone would come to a specific place, specifically to eat food prepared by a specific person who was not their family, this idea landed in her mind and did not leave. She watched the restaurants when she walked past them. She noticed what was missing. She noticed when the food she could smell from the kitchen did not match what was possible from those ingredients. She ate in one of them once and sat very still while she ate and thought, I can do better than this. She went back to the village on Friday evenings and cooked for the family and the neighbours who somehow always knew when Amara was home for the weekend and always found a reason to be nearby around dinner time. At 17, she made a decision. She was going to Accra for university. She was going to study something. She had not fully decided what, but something that would give her the formal knowledge to match the practical knowledge she already had. And after that, she was going to build something with food. Her parents listened to this plan on a Sunday evening after dinner. Her father was quiet for a long time after she finished speaking. Her mother was watching his face. University costs money, her father said. I know, Amara said, I will work. You are already working, her father said, on the farm here. I know, she said, I will work there too while I study. Joseph looked at his daughter. He looked at the way she was sitting, not nervously, not performing confidence, just there, certain of what she was saying in the way of someone who has thought about it long enough that the certainty is settled. He looked at Beatrice. Beatrice gave him one small nod. He looked back at Amara. When you get there, he said slowly, do not forget what you already know how to do, the things you learned here. He gestured slightly toward the kitchen. That is not less than what they will teach you. It is different, keep both. I will, Papa, she said. And come home, her mother said, often. Always, Mama, she said. She left for Accra the following year. She enrolled in a business management program at a polytechnic in Accra. Not the most prestigious institution, but the one she could afford with the combination of her own small savings, her parents' contribution, and a small bursary she had applied for and received based on her secondary school results. From the very first week she worked. She found a position as a kitchen assistant at a small chop bar near the Polytechnic. The work was early mornings, 5 to 8 before her lectures started. She peeled, she chopped, she washed, she carried, she cleaned. The owner, a woman named Auntie Comfort, was a good cook but a difficult employer. She was demanding in the specific way of people who have built something with great effort and are protective of every part of it. She watched Amara carefully for the first 2 weeks, testing what she could and could not do. On the 15th day, Auntie Comfort was sick. She had a fever and could not get out of bed. She sent a message to the chop bar through her daughter. Amara is in charge this morning. Do not let the standards fall. Amara ran the kitchen alone that morning. She cooked the morning soup, the rice, the stew. She managed the 2 other assistants who were both older than her and initially reluctant to take direction from a 19-year-old student. I am not the boss, Amara told them simply. Auntie Comfort is the boss. I am just making sure her kitchen runs the way she would want while she cannot be here." It worked, the kitchen ran. The food was ready on time. The customers ate. One of them, a regular, asked Auntie Comfort's daughter who had cooked the stew that morning because it tasted better than usual. When Auntie Comfort recovered and returned 3 days later, her daughter told her what had happened. Auntie Comfort called Amara aside. "You didn't panic," she said. "No," Amara said. "You know how to manage people too, not just food." "I watched you," Amara said honestly. "For 2 weeks I watched how you ran the kitchen. I tried to do it the same way." Auntie Comfort looked at her for a moment. Then she raised Amara's pay and gave her a new title, kitchen supervisor, unofficial but real. She studied and she worked and she saved. Every month she sent a small amount home to her parents. Every weekend she did not go home. She cooked something from the village recipes in the small shared kitchen of her student accommodation and gave the food to her neighbors, who responded the way people always responded to Amara's food, with eyes that changed. By her 2nd year of studies, she had saved enough to buy a small gas cooker, a set of proper pots, and the ingredients to set up a weekend food stall near the Polytechnic. She sold on Saturdays and Sundays. Rice and stew, wakai, fried plantain, pepper soup, simple things done properly. She priced fairly. She kept everything clean. She was always there before the first customer arrived and never left until every container was empty or properly stored. The stall grew quickly, not explosively, steadily. The way things grow when they are built correctly. By the end of her 2nd year, her weekend stall income was exceeding her kitchen assistant income, and she was managing both simultaneously. She graduated at 22 with her business management certificate and immediately turned her attention to the stall. She was not going to work for someone else anymore. It was time to start building the thing she had been building in her mind since she was 13 years old in a village kitchen watching her mother cook. She found a spot on a busy road in a residential part of Accra. She negotiated a monthly rental for a small roadside space, not a shop, just a position, a few square meters of pavement-adjacent space where she put her gas cookers and her tables and her simple hand-painted sign. Amara's Kitchen, home-cooked food, daily from 7 am. The sign was not fancy, the food behind it was. The first week was slow. The 2nd week was better. By the end of the 1st month she had regulars, office workers who came in the morning for breakfast before their commutes, traders from the nearby market who came at noon, students from a school down the road who came after class. She worked from 5 in the morning to 8 in the evening, 7 days a week for the first 6 months. She did not complain about this to anyone, not because she was performing strength, but because she genuinely did not experience it as suffering. She was building something. The hours were not a burden. They were the work, and the work was exactly what she had been born to do. It was during those early months at the stall that she first noticed the young man. If this story is already feeling real to you, do us a favor, subscribe to Folktales Vision right now and turn on the notification bell. We post every other day, and you do not want to miss what comes next in this story. He appeared on a Tuesday morning in the 3rd month of her stall. She noticed him the way you notice someone who is trying not to be noticed, which is the surest way to be noticed by anyone who is paying attention. He was standing about 15 meters from her stall on the edge of the road watching, not watching her specifically, watching the food, the steam coming from the pots, the way the customers sat and ate. He had the look of someone calculating something, not plotting, just calculating, working out whether something was possible. As young, she would later guess he was about 20, though he looked older than that in the way that people who have been through hard things look older than they are. He was thin, genuinely thin, the kind that comes from not eating enough rather than from build. His clothes were worn but not completely destroyed. He had the bearing, despite everything visible, of someone who was not entirely at home in the condition he was currently in. He stood straight. He looked at things directly rather than sideways. She watched him for about 2 minutes while she served other customers. Then she called out, "Are you going to stand there, or are you going to come and eat?" He looked at her, a quick, sharp look. Then, "I don't have money." "I didn't ask you about money," she said. "I asked if you were coming to eat." He was quiet for a moment, then he walked over. She served him a plate of rice and stew with fried plantain, a full plate, the same as she gave every paying customer. She placed it on the table in front of him and went back to her cooking. He ate without speaking, Quickly at first, the way people eat when they have not eaten in a while, and the first bites unlock the hunger properly. Then more slowly, as if he was remembering that the food was actually good and deserved attention. When he finished, he stood up and said, "Thank you." "Tomorrow also," she said, without looking up from the pot she was stirring. He came back the next day, and the day after, and the day after that. His name was Kwame Asante. She learned this on the fourth day when she finally asked, not because she had been waiting but because she had been busy and the conversation had not happened before. "Kwame," he said. "Amara," she said. "I know," he said, "it's on the sign." She smiled at that. He was 21 years old. He was from Accra, born and raised in the city, which was something you could tell from how he moved through it even now in his current condition. He knew the streets. He knew which roads to avoid at certain hours and which were safe. He had the comfort in the city's rhythms that only comes from growing up inside them. Beyond his name and his age and his origins, he volunteered nothing. And Amara, who had grown up around farmers who measured words carefully because words took time that the work also needed, did not push. She asked what she wanted to know and accepted what he offered and left the rest alone. What she did know from observation rather than information was this: he was not stupid, not even close. On the days when the morning rush was light and she had a few minutes to sit, she sometimes sat with a notebook going over her accounts or her supply lists. Once, she left the notebook open on the table while she went to stir a pot. When she came back, he was looking at it, not interfering, just reading. And the expression on his face was not the expression of someone who was confused by numbers. It was the expression of someone who was reading them and understanding them and thinking about them. She filed this away without saying anything. Over weeks, then months, a rhythm developed. He came most mornings, sometimes for lunch too if he had been nearby. She fed him. They talked not about anything heavy, just the ordinary talk of two young people who are sharing the same stretch of morning. The weather, the customers, small things that happened on the road. She told him about a difficult supplier who had delivered inferior tomatoes 2 weeks running. He told her about a better market 3 streets away, where the produce was consistently good. She went to the market he suggested. He was right. She started bringing him to help sometimes, not as an employee, nothing official, just asking him to hold something or carry something when an extra pair of hands made the morning work easier. He always came. He was reliable in the way of people who, once they have given their word, keep it. He was also, she noticed over time, quietly watching the business. The way the customers moved, the times of the highest traffic, the things she ran out of before noon and had to tell customers she no longer had. One morning, after she had turned away 4 customers for a dish she had not made enough of, he said, "You always run out of that one on Wednesdays." She looked at him. "You noticed that?" "You run out of it on Wednesdays and Fridays," he said. "The office people from the building down the road finish their weekly work on those days and they come here before they go home. They always order that dish." She stared at him for a moment. "How long have you noticed that?" she asked. He shrugged slightly. "Since the 2nd week." She started making more of that dish on Wednesdays and Fridays. She never ran out of it again on those days. That was Kwame, observant, quiet, thinking about things without needing to announce that he was thinking about them. She never asked him about his life before the street. She sensed clearly that there was something there, something that had brought a young man with obvious intelligence to the condition he was currently in, but she respected the silence around it. If he wanted to tell her, he would. Until then, she would feed him and talk to him and be the thing he came to in the morning, which was clearly something that mattered to him even if he never said so. Months became a year. The stall grew. She hired 1 girl to help her in the mornings. She extended her hours. She started saving towards something more permanent, a proper shop space, walls and a roof and a place that was hers regardless of weather. Kwame was still coming, still watching, still helping when she needed it, still saying almost nothing about himself. And then one morning he was not there. She did not think much of it the first day. People had days when they did not come. The 2nd day she noticed. The 3rd day she looked at the spot where he usually sat and felt something she had not expected to feel. By the end of the 1st week without him, she knew he was not coming back in the usual way. Something had changed. He had not said goodbye, he had not explained. He had simply stopped appearing. She thought about him for longer than she admitted to herself. She went over what she knew of him, which was not much, and tried to find something in it that explained where he had gone or why. She found nothing. She had the name, the age, the city. And the sharp eyes, that was all. She put her focus back on the work. What else could she do? The next 2 years were the years the stall became a shop. She found the space on a proper road, a narrow slot between a pharmacy and a mobile money shop, barely big enough for 8 tables, but it had walls and a roof and its own address, and she painted the outside herself over 2 weekends. Amara's kitchen. Bigger letters this time, Maury certain. She bought proper furniture, a gas oven for baking which she had been wanting for a year, a menu board, a small freezer. She hired 2 people, one for cooking support and one for serving, and she ran the kitchen herself from 5 in the morning every day. The shop found its customers quickly because the stall had already built the name. People who had eaten at the stall started bringing their friends to the shop. Office workers started ordering lunch in bulk for company meetings. On Sundays, families came. She was 25 years old and she had a business that was real and growing and entirely hers. She was also still cooking everything herself, still thinking about scale, still dreaming about the bigger thing that was somewhere ahead. She had not thought about Quaim in several months. She had not forgotten him. She had just placed him in that specific compartment of the mind that holds the people who were real in your life for a time and then became the past. And then it started raining. It was a Tuesday afternoon. A slow, beautiful rain, not a heavy tropical downpour but the gentle kind, the kind that comes in the middle of an afternoon and makes the air smell clean and makes everything slow down slightly. She was between the lunch rush and the evening prep, standing at the shop doorway, watching the rain on the road, holding a cup of tea. She heard the engine before she registered it fully. A car slowing. A black car, larger and cleaner than most of the vehicles on this road, pulling up slowly in front of her shop. She watched it park. The engine turned off. For a moment nothing happened. Then the door opened. And she saw his shoes first, clean and polished, then the trousers, then the rest of him. Quaim Asant was standing in the rain in front of her shop in clothes that cost more than her monthly supply budget. He was taller than she remembered, or maybe it was the way he was standing. He looked different, not just the clothes, something in the bearing, something settled and certain that had not been there at the stall. The thinness was gone. He was himself, but a fuller version, as if the years had filled in what had been missing. He stood in the rain, looking at her standing in the doorway. She looked at him. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Then he said, "You painted the sign bigger." She said, "You disappeared for 2 years." "I know," he said. "Come inside," she said, "before you get wet." He came inside. She made him tea. They sat across from each other at the corner table, the same position they had always occupied, him across from her, even though now everything around them was different. "You have a proper shop," he said, looking around. "I have a proper shop," she confirmed. "It looks right," he said. "It looks like what you were building." She looked at him. "What were you building?" she said. He held her gaze. "That is a long answer," he said. "I have time," she said. He looked at her for a moment. Something was working in his expression, not reluctance exactly, but the specific consideration of someone who has been careful with information for a long time and is deciding whether to change that. "Not yet," he said finally, "but soon." She accepted this the way she had always accepted what he offered and left the rest alone. They talked for 2 hours that afternoon while the rain continued outside. Not about the gap or the black car or what he had built, just the ordinary talk of 2 people who have been apart and are finding each other again. She told him about the shop's journey. He listened the way he always had, completely. He asked specific questions that showed he understood exactly what she was describing. She asked him where he was living. He said in the city. She asked if he was well. He said yes, she believed him. When he stood to leave, he said, "Can I come again?" "Same table," she said. He smiled. It was the first time she had seen him smile properly, and she noticed it the way you notice something that changes the light in a room. He left. The rain had stopped. The black car was still parked outside. She watched him get into it and drive away, and then she stood at the doorway for a moment with her empty teacup and said nothing to nobody. Something was happening. She did not know what yet, but something was happening. What Amara did not know, while she was growing her stall into a shop and her shop into a name, was the full story of what Quaim had been through before the stall and during the years he disappeared. This is that story. Quaim Asante was born in 1993 in Accra, the only child of Daniel and Mercy Asante. His parents were construction workers, not contractors, not supervisors, but the people who do the actual building. His father mixed concrete and laid blocks. His mother carried materials on her head, cleaned sites, and did the finishing labor that the skilled workers did not do. They worked on sites across the city, often on large commercial developments, office buildings, hotels, shopping complexes that the wealthy commissioned and the workers built with their bodies. It was hard physical work that paid a daily rate and offered no security of any kind. When a site finished, the work stopped. They found the next site through a network of other daily workers who passed information about new projects starting. Some weeks were good. Some weeks the information did not come and there was nothing. What Daniel and Mercy had, despite the uncertainty, despite the physical cost of the work, despite everything, was complete clarity about what they wanted for their son. Not this. They did not want Quaim to carry materials on a construction site. Not because the work was beneath anyone. They had too much personal dignity to believe that. But because they could see clearly that the work was destroying their bodies and would destroy his too, and that the education available to them had not been available to them when they were young, and that it was available to him now if they could make it so. This became the organizing principle of their lives. Every naira, every cedi, every amount that could be saved from the daily rate went into a savings purpose that had one name: Quaim's education. Daniel kept a small notebook where he recorded every amount. The notebook was his most protected possession. He kept it in his inner jacket pocket at all times on the worksite. Quaim grew up knowing about the notebook without being told about it directly. He knew it from the things that were not bought when they could have been. From the evenings, his father came home from the site and added something to the notebook before eating. From the way his mother talked about school fees with the specific seriousness of someone for whom this was not an optional expense but a non-negotiable one. He was a good student, not because he was performing gratitude for his parents' sacrifice. He did not think of it in those terms. He was 10 years old. But because the same quality that would make him good at business was already making him good at school. The ability to observe how something worked before trying to master it, the patience to understand fully rather than rush to the surface of things. He had friends at school, but he was slightly apart from the social life of the school in the specific way of children who are slightly more serious than their age requires. His teachers liked him because he asked questions rather than just accepted answers. His classmates liked him because he was not arrogant about being smart, which was the one thing that made smart children bearable to other children. When he was 10 years old on a Thursday morning, the school principal came to his classroom. The next 4 hours were the worst hours of his life. His parents had been travelling to a new work site on the far side of the city. The transport they were in, a shared minibus packed with workers, had been involved in a serious accident at a junction. Both his parents were gone. The specific details of those hours do not need to be written in full. Some things do not need to be described in order to be understood. A 10-year-old child learning that both parents are gone in a single moment. The sound of the classroom around him going completely silent when the principal spoke. The feeling of the chair under him and the desk in front of him being the only solid things in a world that had just become entirely liquid. He went to live with his father's brother, his Uncle Kofi. Uncle Kofi was not a cruel man. He was not unkind, but he was a man with 3 children of his own and a modest income, and a wife who had not been consulted about the addition of a grieving nephew to the household, and the combination of these things created an atmosphere that was not hostile but was never fully warm. Quaim was provided for. He was housed and fed and sent to school. He was not loved in the way that the house he had come from had been full of love. He understood this. He did not blame anyone for it. He was 10 and then 11 and then 12, and the years moved, and he went to school and he did his work, and he kept inside whatever needed to be kept inside. What he kept inside mostly was the notebook. His father's notebook, the savings record, had been among the personal effects returned to Uncle Kofi after the accident. Uncle Kofi had given it to Quaim without fully understanding what it was. Quaim had opened it and seen the columns of amounts and dates and the total that had been building over years, and he had understood immediately and completely what it meant. He kept it in the inside pocket of his school bag, the same way his father had kept it in his jacket pocket. He finished secondary school at 17, with results that were strong enough for university admission. Uncle Kofi's household had fulfilled its basic obligation, and the expectation, now unstated but clear, was that Quaim would find his own way from this point forward. He got a place at a technical institute in Accra. He worked part-time to pay for it. He was not comfortable, but he was managing. Then someone told him about the money. Not the notebook savings, something else. His parents, through a union they had belonged to on the construction sites, had a small insurance policy that had been dormant because nobody in the family had known to claim it. A cousin of his father's had found out about it through a former workmate and had contacted Uncle Kofi, who had contacted Quaim. The amount was not enormous, but it was significant, enough to start something if you were careful with it. Quaim was 20 years old when he received it. He was careful with it in the wrong way. He was 20 years old and had been careful and disciplined and self-contained for 10 years, and now he had money and a certain amount of freedom, and the specific inexperience of someone who has never had either before and does not yet know what to do with both. He decided to start a business. The business he chose was cars. Not because he had deep knowledge of cars, he did not yet, but because he had been watching the car trade in Accra with the observant eye that was his most consistent quality, and he had seen that there was money moving in it. People were buying and selling used cars. And the margins looked significant to a 20-year-old who had grown up in a household where margins were counted in cedis at the end of each day. He found a small space on a busy road and rented it. He bought 3 used cars at what he thought were good prices. He hired 2 men who told him they knew the car business, a mechanic named Bright and a salesman named Ebo. He trusted them to run the operation because he did not yet know how to run it himself. This was the mistake that cost him everything. Bright and Ebo were not thieves in the dramatic sense. They were the more ordinary kind, the kind that is worse in some ways. They simply redirected money slowly, consistently, in amounts small enough not to trigger immediate alarm. Parts purchased at inflated prices with kickbacks going to the supplier. Customers shown cars with hidden problems that Bright had diagnosed and not reported. Sales figures reported at lower amounts than the actual transactions. Small leakages everywhere, each individually explainable, collectively devastating. Quaim did not catch it for almost a year. When he finally began to see the pattern, when the numbers stopped adding up no matter how many times he ran them, he confronted Bright and Ebo. They denied everything initially, then confirmed everything gradually, then disappeared. He was left with a business that had been stripped from the inside. The 3 cars were gone, sold in ways that the money had not come back from. The rental on the space was behind. He had spent through the insurance money on the business and on living, and there was almost nothing left. He tried to hold on. He took on repair work himself, learning mechanics from necessity rather than choice, watching videos, asking questions of every mechanic he could find who was willing to teach him. He worked on cars with his own hands, taking on small jobs, trying to earn enough to stabilize what was left of the business. It was not enough. The space went, the remaining assets went, the last of the money went. He was 22 years old and he had nothing. He spent 3 months in a state that was not quite homelessness but was adjacent to it, sleeping at a friend's place when the friend was willing, at a relative's when possible, on the street on the nights when neither was available. It was during this period that he started going to Amara's stall. He had passed it one morning and smelled the food, and stood at a distance for 20 minutes calculating whether he could ask without money, and what the likely response would be, and whether the humiliation was worth the hunger. He had done the same calculations several times in his life during those months, and the result was usually that he did not ask. Then she called out to him, directly, without waiting for him to decide. And he walked over, and she fed him, and he came back the next day. What happened to Quaim at Amara's stall was not just food. He knew this even at the time, though he could not have articulated it clearly. What happened was that he sat at a table every morning and watched a young woman build something with her own hands, step by step, carefully and without shortcuts, and the watching repaired something in him that the business failure had broken. He saw her run out of the Wednesday dish and he saw her adjust. He saw a difficult customer, and he saw her manage it without losing the dignity of either of them. He saw a supplier deliver bad produce, and he saw her send it back firmly and find another source by the afternoon. He was watching a person who knew what she was doing and why, who had learned from the ground up, and was therefore unshakable by the ordinary difficulties of running something. He was also, though he did not name it yet, falling in love with her. But he was not going to let himself fall in love with anyone until he had fixed what was broken in himself. That was the decision he made quietly over several mornings at the stall. He was going to go away. He was going to build something real. He was going to learn the car business from the inside, from the mechanical work upward, until he knew every part of it himself and could not be cheated by anyone because he knew more than anyone he could hire. And then he was going to come back. He stopped going to the stall on a Monday morning. He did not say goodbye because saying goodbye would have required an explanation, and the explanation was not ready. He got a job at a proper car workshop in a different part of Accra. Not as a manager. As the most basic level of mechanic assistant, handing tools, cleaning the bay, watching. He told the head mechanic, a man named Mr. Asamo who had been in the trade for 30 years, that he wanted to learn everything from the beginning, and he was willing to do any work required to earn that teaching. Mr. Asamo, who had seen many young men pass through his workshop with various degrees of seriousness, looked at Quame for a moment and said, "If you are still here in 3 months, I will know you are serious." Quame was still there in 3 months, and 6 and 12. He learned, not just the mechanics, which he absorbed with the focused attention of someone who had already failed once for not knowing and was not going to fail again for the same reason, but everything around the car business. The supply chain for parts, the pricing structures for different types of repairs, the psychology of customers in different market segments, the difference between high turnover low margin work and low turnover high margin work, and when each was the right strategy. After 18 months at Mr. Asamo's workshop, he had enough knowledge and enough saved from his mechanic wages to try again, but differently this time. He did not hire people to do what he could not do, he did only what he could do himself at first. He rented a small space on a different road from his first attempt. He set up a basic repair workshop. 1 bay, his own tools, his own hands. He worked 7 days a week. He charged fairly. He was honest about what a car needed and what it did not need, which in an industry where overcharging customers for unnecessary work was standard practice made him unusual enough that word spread. His early customers brought other customers. His reputation was for honesty and competence, which was a combination so rare in the used car and repair trade that it functioned almost as marketing. After a year of the repair workshop, he added a small car sales section. Not many cars, 3 at a time, carefully selected, accurately described to buyers, priced fairly. He handled every transaction himself. After another year, he expanded the sales section and hired his first employee, a young man named Arto who he trained personally in the workshop before giving him any customer-facing responsibility. He needed Arto to know the cars the way he knew them, so that nothing could be hidden. The business grew steadily. Without shortcuts, he reinvested almost everything for the first 3 years. He lived simply, a decent room, decent food, nothing more. He was building the foundation properly because he had seen what happened when the foundation was wrong. By the time he walked back into Amara's life, 2 years after he had stopped appearing at her stall, his business occupied a large compound on a main road in Accra. It had a proper showroom with 30 cars, a full mechanical workshop with 6 bays and 8 employed mechanics, a car painting section, a PPF application bay, a car wash, a tyre and rim service. Everything under one roof. Everything managed by a man who knew every function personally, because he had done every function himself. He had also, 3 months before he parked in front of her shop in the rain, crossed a financial threshold that meant the word millionaire was no longer an aspiration, but a description. He was 26 years old. You are right in the middle of this story now. Subscribe to Folktales Vision if you have not already, the best part is still coming. He came back to the shop every few days after that rainy Tuesday. The pattern was not the same as the stall, he did not come every morning now, he was running a business and his days were full. But he came when he could and she was always there when he did because she was always there. That had not changed. They talked the way they had always talked, easily, completely, about things that mattered and things that did not. She told him about her plans for the shop, the bigger space she had been looking at 3 roads away, the catering orders she had started taking for events, the idea she had for a second location eventually, something she kept saying eventually about the way you say eventually about things you are almost ready for. He listened with the same complete attention. He asked the questions that showed he was thinking about her business as seriously as she was. She did not ask him about the black car again. She had decided she was going to let him arrive at that conversation himself. She was patient. She had always been patient. 3 weeks after the rainy Tuesday, he arrived at the shop at closing time. She was alone, her 2 employees had finished and gone. She was doing the end-of-day cleaning and accounts. He sat at the corner table and waited without being asked to, and she finished what she was doing and made tea and sat across from him. "Tell me now," she said, not as a demand, just as a statement of what was ready to happen. He looked at her. Something shifted in his expression, not reluctance, but the specific seriousness of someone who has been carrying something for a long time and is about to set it down. "Which part do you want first?" he said. "All of it," she said, in order from the beginning. He told her. He started with his parents, the construction work, the daily rate, the notebook his father kept. He told her about the accident when he was 10, and he watched her face change as he said it, not dramatically, just a specific softening that meant she had heard it fully. He told her about Uncle Kofi and the years that were provided for but not warm. He told her about the insurance money and the car business and Bright and Ebo and the bankruptcy. He told her about sleeping on the street on the nights when he had nowhere to go. She was completely still while he spoke. She did not interrupt. She did not perform emotion. She simply received everything he said with the full attention she gave to everything that mattered. When he got to the part about the stall, he paused for a moment. "When I came to your stall," he said, "I was not just hungry. I had lost the ability to believe things could change. The bankruptcy had done something to how I saw everything. Like the whole world had confirmed something I was afraid was true about myself." "What were you afraid was true?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. "That I was going to end up like my parents," he said. "Not the people they were good people. But the condition of never having enough, never being secure, having everything you build taken by something you did not fully understand." He paused. "I was afraid that was all that was available to me." She looked at him, and the stall changed that. "You changed that," he said. "Watching you every morning, you were doing exactly what I was trying to do, but you were doing it from knowing the work. From the ground up. Every morning I watched you and I saw what it looked like to build something that could not be taken because the knowledge behind it was yours." She was quiet for a moment. "Why didn't you just tell me that?" "Because I was ashamed," he said simply, "of the failure, of what I was when I sat at that table." "I didn't care what you were," she said. "I know," he said. "That made it worse, actually. People who should have judged you less and didn't, their kindness is harder to receive than their cruelty sometimes." She understood this. She did not say so immediately, she just let it sit. He continued. He told her about leaving the stall, about Mr. Asamo and the workshop, about the 2 years of learning and saving and rebuilding, about the one-bay repair shop, about the expansion, about where the business was now. When he finished, the shop was fully dark outside the window. The street sounds had settled into the evening register. Their teacups were empty. She looked at him for a long time without speaking. "Why are you telling me now?" she said. "Because," he said, "I want to ask you something, and I could not ask you while I was still hiding the story." She waited. "I want to know if you will marry me," he said. Not with a ring, not with a grand gesture. Just the direct question, delivered the same way she delivered everything, cleanly, without decoration, meaning it entirely. She looked at him. She was quiet for a moment. That was not indecision, but was the specific quality of a person making sure they say what they mean correctly. "Yes," she said, "but first I need a promise from you." "What promise?" "That there are no more things," she said. "No more parts of the story you are keeping. When I marry someone, I marry the whole person, not the version they decided was acceptable to show. Everything." He held her gaze. "That was everything," he said. "Then I need to see where you live," she said. "Where you actually live, not the car, the house." "Okay," he said. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," he agreed. He picked her up the next morning in the black car. She was dressed simply. She had not tried to prepare for whatever she was about to see. She had decided she would see it as it was and respond to it as it was. They drove to the north side of Accra, into an area she knew only from the outside, a neighborhood of large compounds and serious gates and trees visible above the walls. He turned into a gated entrance. A guard opened the gate. She looked at the house as the car moved up the drive. It was the largest private home she had seen from this close. Not a palace, it was a house, recognizably a house, but built at a scale and with a quality of materials that placed it in a different category from anything she had known personally. A proper driveway with space for 6 cars, a facade of clean stone and glass, a garden that was maintained, a gate with a security house. He parked and they got out. She stood in the driveway and looked at the house. He stood beside her. "This is yours," she said. "Yes," he said. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "You lived in this house while you were coming to eat at my stall every morning." "No," he said. "I moved here 9 months ago. This is what the business built. When I was at the stall, I was sleeping on a friend's floor and sometimes the street." She looked at the house again, then she looked at him. "It doesn't change anything," she said. "I know," he said. "I mean, the house does not make the yes different from what it would have been before the house," she said. "I want you to understand that." "I understand it," he said. "That is why I told you the story in order, so you could say yes to the story and then see the house, not the other way." She looked at him. "You planned the order." "Yes," he said. She almost smiled. "You are very calculated for someone who asked me to marry him with no ring." He reached into his jacket pocket. He held out a ring box. "I have had it for 3 weeks," he said. "I was waiting for the right order." She laughed, a real laugh, sudden and warm, and he heard the same quality in it that she had heard in his smile the day after the rain, something that changed the light. She took the ring from the box herself. She looked at it. She put it on her own finger and held her hand up to check it. "It fits," she said. "I know your hands," he said. "I watched them for months." She looked at her hand, then she looked at him. "Now show me the inside," she said. "I want to see the kitchen." He showed her the kitchen. She stood in it for about 2 minutes, touching the surfaces, opening things, checking the cooker. Then she turned around. "This kitchen," she said, "is completely wasted on someone who cannot cook." "I can cook," he said. "Can you?" she said. "I can make tea," he said. She shook her head slowly. "I am going to have to completely rethink this kitchen." He smiled. "Yes," she said, "you are." The wedding happened 7 months after the morning in the kitchen. Not because they needed 7 months to be sure. They were both people who decided things fully and did not revisit decided things. But because both of them were building, and building required attention, and they had agreed together that the wedding would happen in the right season rather than the fast season. Amara's parents came from the village. Her father wore his best cloth and sat through the entire ceremony with the contained expression of a man who is not accustomed to displaying emotion in public and is currently fighting that conditioning hard. Her mother cried from the moment the ceremony started and did not stop for most of it and did not seem to need to. Kwame had no parents to invite. He had Uncle Kofi's family. Some of them came, and the ones who came were warm in the way that people who were not entirely present during the difficult years sometimes try to make up for it at the good ones. He did not hold it against anyone. He was too full of other things to carry grievance. The reception was large and warm and went long into the evening. Amara had insisted on handling the food herself, or rather, on overseeing it, because she now had a team. But the menu and the execution were hers, and everyone at the reception could taste the difference between food prepared by someone who was catering an event and food prepared by someone for whom this was an expression of love. People talked about the food for weeks afterward. At the reception, when the formal parts were done, and the room had become the kind of warm noise that only large happy gatherings produce, Kwame found Amara at the edge of the gathering. She had been talking to a group of women, but they had moved away, and for a moment she was standing alone, looking at the room. He stood beside her. "Are you happy?" he said. She looked at the room, at her parents at a table, her mother still dabbing at her eyes, her father now in a slightly animated conversation with someone from the business side of things. At Kwame's Uncle Kofi, who was eating with the specific serious attention of someone who has not had food this good in a very long time. At her kitchen team moving through the room efficiently, the way she had trained them. "Yes," she said. "Completely," he said. She looked at him. "Completely," she said. He put his arm around her and she leaned slightly against him, and they stood there for a while, and the room moved around them. The years that followed were the years the seeds became the garden. Amara's kitchen, the shop, moved to the larger space she had been saying eventually about. 40 covers. A proper professional kitchen. A menu that was entirely hers, developed from the village recipes of her mother and the years of cooking in every condition and the specific knowledge of what Accra's working population wanted to eat when they sat down in the middle of their day and needed to feel properly fed. The new Amara's kitchen became something people talked about, not as a trendy destination, as the place you took people who actually cared about food. The reviews were consistent. The food tastes like someone who loves cooking made it for people they love. That was not accidental. That was a philosophy. The catering operation grew alongside the restaurant. Corporate events, family celebrations, weddings, she was turning down more than she was accepting within 18 months of the larger space opening. She hired a catering manager. She trained a junior chef who she had found through the Polytechnic where she had studied, a girl of 20 who cooked with the same instinct Amara recognized in herself because she had been looking for it specifically. She opened the second location at 30 years old. A different part of Accra, a different size and feel, but the same philosophy. Same sourcing. She had relationships with 2 farms in the eastern region and 1 near Kumasi, growers she had found and built trust with over years, people who understood that consistency was not a request but a requirement. She was also, by this point, in conversations with a hotel group about a partnership that would put a version of Amara's kitchen inside 3 of their properties in Ghana. The conversation was careful and detailed and took 8 months to complete. When it completed, it was real. She called her mother from the car on the way home from the signing. "The hotel deal is done," she said. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then, "Your grandmother had a pot that she said could feed a whole village," she said. "She said one day the right person would use it to feed a city." Amara looked out the car window at Accra moving past. "I need a bigger pot," she said. Her mother laughed. "Come home soon," she said, "and bring Kwame. Your father wants to talk to him about something." Her father always wanted to talk to Kwame about something. The 2 men had developed a specific relationship, quiet, practical, mutual, that Amara watched from a slight distance with the particular warmth of a woman watching 2 things she loves recognize each other. Kwame's business in the same years became something the city noticed. Asant Auto Group, which was what it had become, the one compound having expanded twice and a second location having opened, was known in Accra for the specific combination of qualities that Kwame had built it on. Honest assessment of vehicles, fair pricing, a service department that diagnosed correctly and did not recommend what was not needed, and staff who were trained the same way Kwame had trained himself from the work upward. The second location was managed by Arto, the first employee, who had grown into the business with Kwame and who was now running the second site with the same philosophy. A third location was in planning. What Kwame had built was not just a business. It was a specific refusal to participate in the practices that had cheated him when he was 20. Every policy he set, every standard he held, was the direct opposite of what Bright and Ebo had done. The business was the revenge, not on those 2 men specifically, but on the idea that the car trade had to work the way they had worked it. His employees knew this about him, not from anything he said explicitly, from watching him operate. He stayed in the workshop regularly, not to micromanage but to stay connected to the knowledge that had built the thing. He knew every car in the showroom. He could tell you the service history of each one. He could diagnose an engine problem by sound because he had spent 1.5 years doing it by sound with Mr. Asamo. Mr. Asamo, who was now retired, came to the showroom opening for the third location. Kwame had invited him personally. The old man had walked through the workshop slowly, looking at everything, nodding occasionally. Then he had found Kwame and shaken his hand. "This is the work," Mr. Asamo said, "just that." 3 words. It was the most important review Kwame ever received. On a Sunday evening 3 years after the wedding, Kwame and Amara sat together in the garden of their home. Not the mansion where she had first stood in the driveway, but a different house. One they had found together and designed together and built together, which was a different thing from a house that existed before the relationship. The garden had a kitchen garden section at the side. Amara's requirement, non-negotiable. A small nod to the village and her mother's cooking and the specific connection between growing things and feeding people that had been with her since she was 7. There were tomatoes in the corner. She had been tending them for 2 months and they were just beginning to turn red. Kwame was watching her check them with the specific attention he had always given to watching her do things she was good at. "You know," he said, "the first time I really saw you properly, was the morning you ran out of the Wednesday dish." She looked up from the tomatoes. The Wednesday dish. You made more the next week, he said. And the week after, you adjusted without making a big thing of it. You just saw the pattern and fixed it. He paused. I had just failed at a business because I could not see my own patterns. Watching you see yours, he stopped. Made you feel like it was possible, she said. Made me feel like it was possible, he said. She looked at him for a moment. Then she said, You told me once that my kindness was harder to receive than cruelty would have been. Yes, he said. I want you to know something about that, she said. I did not feed you because I was performing kindness. I fed you because you were a person who was hungry and I had food, and those two things should connect to each other. That is all it was. I know, he said. But also, she said, going back to the tomatoes, turning one gently on its vine, checking its color, I noticed you, from the first morning. I noticed that you were watching things, that you were thinking about what you saw. She looked back at him. I did not feed you because I pitied you. I fed you because I thought you were interesting. He was quiet for a moment. You never told me that, he said. I am telling you now, she said. He looked at her, at the woman who had built a restaurant group from a stall she had run in the early mornings of a polytechnic education, who had never stopped cooking since she was 7 years old in a village kitchen, who had fed a stranger without asking why he was a stranger, and changed both their lives by doing it. I am going to walk the edges every morning, he said. It was something his father had written in the notebook. She looked at him, surprised. He had told her about the notebook. He had shown it to her once. She had held it carefully. Good, she said, walk them. She turned the last tomato gently on its vine. It was almost ready. These will be ready by Thursday, she said. Good, he said, I will make the stew. She looked at him. You cannot make stew, she said. I have been learning, he said. She stared at him. Since when? Since you told me the kitchen was wasted on me, he said. That was 3 years ago. I have had time. She looked at him with the expression of someone who is genuinely not sure whether to believe this. Show me, she said. He stood up from his chair. Thursday, he said, when the tomatoes are ready. She looked at the tomatoes, then at him. Thursday, she said. And that is the full story. A girl born on a farm who loved cooking and never stopped. A boy whose parents built everything for him and lost everything on a Thursday morning when he was 10. A stall, a stranger, a plate of food given without asking for anything back, 2 years of absence while both of them built what they needed to build, a black car on a rainy afternoon, a kitchen visited and judged fairly, a promise kept, a wedding. And 2 businesses, growing side by side in the same city, where both of them had started with nothing. Let me say one thing about this story before we close. The thing that started everything was not the food. I know the food is what people will remember, the stall, the Wednesday dish, the tomatoes in the garden. But the thing that actually started everything was simpler than food. It was the decision to see someone. She could have ignored him standing at the edge of the road. Most people would have, most people do. A young man looking at food from a distance, hungry and not asking, it is very easy to look past that. The street is full of things you can choose not to see. She chose to see him. She called out to him. She fed him. She made him feel like a person who deserved to sit at a table rather than stand at the edge of someone else's life. That one decision, that one moment of choosing to see rather than look past, changed everything that followed, for both of them. This is not a story about charity. She was not richer than him when she fed him. She was also building, also struggling, also counting at the end of every day. She gave from what she was building, not from what she had to spare. And this is not a story about reward. She did not feed him because she expected something in return. She would not have stopped feeding him if he had remained exactly who he appeared to be. The love and the success and the restaurant group and everything else, none of it was the point of the kindness. The kindness was the point of the kindness. But the story also teaches something about being seen. Quaim spent 2 years invisible, not to everyone but to himself. He had failed, and that failure had convinced him that he was the failure rather than the person who had made mistakes he could learn from. Every morning at that stall, Amara treated him exactly as she treated every other customer. Same plate, same table, same conversation, same attention. That is rarer than it sounds. Being treated as exactly equal to everyone else by someone who knows your condition is different. That is a specific kind of dignity that does very particular things to a person's ability to believe in themselves again. He went away and built something because of what he saw at that stall. But he went away and built something because of how he was treated at that stall. Those are different things, and both of them matter. There is one last thing. The tomatoes. She grew tomatoes in the garden of the house they built together. Small detail, barely mentioned, but the cooking started with a farm. The cooking started with soil and seeds and the specific patience of growing things. From her mother's kitchen in the village to the professional kitchen in the hotel partnership, every meal began in the ground. Every business she built was rooted in that original knowledge. The tomatoes in the garden were not decoration, they were the reminder. The beginning, still present in the middle of everything that the beginning had become. Keep the beginning present. Whatever you have built, wherever you have arrived, keep some small version of where you started visible so that you never forget what you are actually building and why. A plate of rice for a stranger, a girl from a village who loves to cook, a boy with his father's notebook in his pocket, everything that followed. Sometimes the smallest thing done with the most honesty grows into the largest thing you will ever see. My wonderful viewers, if this story stayed with you, do 3 things right now. Like this video, not for the number but so more people can find this story. Subscribe to Folktales Vision and hit the notification bell so you never miss what we put out. And share this with one person who is being kind right now without knowing why it matters. Because it matters. It always matters. Comment below and tell us, have you ever done something kind for a stranger and discovered later that it meant more than you knew? We want to hear your story. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.